Hi, I'm Pete Weber, television voice of the Nashville Predators, and this is the Power Play Break, the place we talk about pucks. Don't you forget it.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Riley again for the Power Play Break. Tonight we are joined by the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Rick Peckham. Rick, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Chris.
Let's go back now early on in your life when you were a young man growing up in Ohio. What town did you come from, and when did you first get your taste of athletics? How old were you?
I grew up in Kettering, Ohio, which is a suburb of Dayton. Brady Hoke grew up in Kettering, Ohio, the University of Michigan football coach. I was pulling for him recently against Ohio State, came up just short there, but I've always been interested in sports, and I go back to when I was 7 years old and I first started following sports, and the Green Bay Packers, for some reason, became my team. And of course, that particular year, I'll give my age away here, that was 1962. They started the season 10-0, and somehow I latched onto them and discovered football and baseball and thought, you know, I really want to follow this, and this is a lot of fun. Well, my most vivid memory of that season, even though they did end up winning the championship game, was the Thanksgiving Day game against the Lions. And if anybody watched the recent Packer-Lion Thanksgiving game, they actually flash back to it. Bart Starr, I think, was sacked 12 times in that game. The Lions upset the Packers 26-14. I was in tears the whole Thanksgiving. Just
Thanksgiving's been ruined in the Peckham family.
But I love sports. And without knowing it at the time, whatever sports happened to be on TV or radio, I was interested in following sports, you know, professionally that way, and tried to play as many sports as I could. There was no hockey in my area at that time, but football, basketball, baseball.
Now, when you went to high school, you were a football player, basketball player, baseball player? Or?
I played some basketball. Played a couple of years at Alter High School, which has had a great tradition of success in Ohio high school basketball. In fact, I wouldn't say he was the guy that knocked me off the team, but he came along, and a young phenom named Jim Paxson, who John would later follow, his brother, who of course went on to Notre Dame, but Jim of course played at the University of Dayton, had a long NBA career, just a great player, and NBA executive as well. But it was a basketball hotbed. It was a good spot for basketball. The University of Dayton had some great teams in the 60s. And it was fun to follow and be a part of in terms of just playing at the high school level. But once I got cut, we had an older student at the school, a guy named Mike Forens, who was announced in the NHL, previously with Dallas and Washington. And he had talked the basketball coach into letting him announce play-by-play on his home basketball tape that he would use for, you know, coaching purposes. And that got things started at Alder High School, to where by the time I left, we had, what was it, a 3-camera operation. We had guys who were, kids who were interested in the technological side of things, directing and so forth, and myself as one of the announcers. So we would, you know, we managed to get a sponsor. Local pizza place would sponsor us.
Did you go out and sell the spot? Or?
Yep, I had to go out and sell the sponsorship. Now, we weren't on the air.
Okay.
We would tape games into just an audio recorder for the football games plus the road basketball games, and we would have this TV set up for our home basketball game. So it was a great experience. And at that point, you know, I really was pointing in the direction of being a sportscaster, and really got a jump on a lot of people in terms of getting that kind of experience behind a microphone.
Now, did you have like any inkling at all about hockey, or was it, you know, there's a lot of minor, like the Dayton Gems have been in there, a lot of different teams have come through that area. Did you ever go to any games at that point in your life when you were in high school?
I'd gone to a couple of Dayton Gems games, but I really wasn't interested in hockey. And then all of a sudden, it was 1970, the Boston Bruins were playing well. I just happened to catch a game on CBS on a Sunday afternoon, and the Bruins were beating the Maple Leafs, and Derek Sanderson beat Tim Horton in a fight, and Bobby Orr was, you know, skating all over the place. Yeah, I mean, he was dominating the game. And I said, wow, this really looks interesting here. And I was, you know, junior in high school at the time, and I started to follow the Bruins. So I'd start to listen to all their games on WBZ and try to catch as many games on Sunday afternoon, and really got the bug at that point.
Who did you listen to at that point in your life? A lot of great sportscasters on the radio back then, especially through the Midwest. I mean, was there anybody who stuck out to you at that point as a young man?
Well, Ray Scott, being the voice of the Packers, was
Yeah.
my favorite, and he was so easy to imitate. Even, as an 8 or 9-year-old, I could do a Ray Scott imitation. Star, Dowler, touchdown, and that's all you had
That's all you had
to
to say
really.
back then.
But Chris Schenkel was a favorite. He had just such a great voice, and was doing college football every Saturday afternoon with Bud Wilkinson at that time. And as far as starting to listen to hockey, Bob Wilson was doing the radio. He and Fred Cusick switched off. I think Bob went to St. Louis for a couple of years, and Fred took over in the radio for a while, and then Bob ended up coming back. But Dan Kelly, of course, KMOX in St. Louis. You could always pick up
Those
the
signals
games
must have
there.
been great as a
Yes.
kid because you could listen late at night on the radio. I mean, I did that as a young man, too. It's pretty
Sure.
cool to pick them up as they're coming across the country late at night.
Yeah, and Lloyd Pettit, who did the Blackhawk games, and you could follow a number of teams. I used to listen to a lot of baseball games. Ernie Harwell. Became a Tigers fan really through Ernie Harwell and listening to WJR in the late '60s, and they had that great run and won the World Series in '68
With Denny McLain and all those gentlemen. Yeah.
Right. Jim Northrup was my favorite player on that team, but there's some great memories of following sports and just, you know what it's like, Chris.
Yeah.
You just pour over these statistics. You've got all the rosters memorized in the entire National Football League, and you're just immersed in it. And that's what I was
Did you
doing.
ever, like when you were younger, before you got the chance in high school, did you do play-by-play in the bedroom, or did you try to do stuff like that?
Oh,
or?
yeah. When I probably started, and with really no intent on becoming a sportscaster, but just kind of recreating Cincinnati Reds games. They were obviously
Were you
the
a big
Major
Reds
League.
fan at that point, or
Yes, I
Indians?
was.
Okay.
Yep. And I'd listen to Wade Hoyt do games, and I would have little army men. I would, I'd play football games and basketball. I created little baskets and created a baseball field. I'd take like a work clipboard my dad had, and I'd take chalk and write teams' names and score by inning on there, and it'd drive him crazy. I used to steal his T-shirts
And clean them off.
and I would write numbers, big block Packer road jerseys or something like that. Try to get the stripes right and the block numbers and all that. And he said, "Where's my T-shirts?" And I'm out in the backyard playing football.
Did a lot of your friends take to that as well? Were they, big on the sports thing too? I mean, like I remember as a kid, everyone in my neighborhood, everyone loved sports, loved the Yankees, loved
Yeah.
whatever. That kind of a thing. Was that kind of what you had with your friends?
Yeah, it was. They weren't as big in it as I was. I was really well known for knowing every player in the National Football League, every baseball player, and all that stuff. But I was right in there with them in terms of playing sandlot baseball and being in all the teams and so forth. So it was a very active sports community at St. Albert the Great grade school, and then Alter High School from there. We had a lot of fun playing sports, like a lot of kids in those days, and you kind of wish that things weren't so organized now and just kind of pick
Just
up
guys went and
games that we
played
did.
Sandlot, go whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever season came along for you guys, we're going to play this. That's what we're going to do, guys. Fall, we're playing football. Winter, we'll do hoops, or we'll do something outside. And springtime comes along, and it's baseball for you guys.
Exactly.
So we'll have more with Rick after this on the Power Play break.